This is Geek Gab with your hosts, Dornall and me, Daddy Warpig. We are back, Geek Gab, for Saturday, January 29th, 2022. Such an exciting day, such a great day, such a day that will go down in Legends forever. And I will tell you why. Would you like to know why, Dornall?
I'm at the edge of my seat. I forgot to
my.
pop popcorn. I need to know.
I went and saw the new Scream. I
Why?
went and saw the new Scream.
Why?
Why? Because I really, really, really thought it would be good.
Hmm.
Do you
Hold
think
on.
I'm lying?
Hold on. My sarcasmometer's beeping.
Um, yeah. I'm going to do a very, very brief review because we've got a guest in the wings who is waiting to come on that we promised people, and we're kind of a little, well, so anyways, I went and saw the new Scream, and you know what January's for, right? For movies, right?
Mm-hmm. Dump the
Yeah, for
trash.
dump the trash. It's trash dumping month. Every movie that they think isn't any good, they want to make money from, they dump in January. And I'm happy to tell you, folks, that Scream, it does not buck the trend. It, it does not subvert your expectations, all right? If you were holding on to that hope that this would somehow be the exception to the January rule, it is not. I will tell you what it reminds me of. Do you remember how The Force Awakens was a remake of Star Wars?
Sure.
And then The Matrix, Revolutions, or Reawakening, or Remakes, or Reimagining. What was that called?
Resurrection?
Resurrections. There we go. How that was a remake of the very first Matrix movie.
Sure.
Now, if you're good at pattern recognition,
Well, I
you
mean,
can
I need three. I need 3 or 4 in a row to actually recognize a pattern. 2
you
is
can
just a
see
coincidence.
yeah, you can see where I'm going with this. Yeah, Scream, the fifth one, technically Scream 5, they're just calling it Scream, is a remake, or what we're calling a soft reboot of the very first Scream. Literally. In the very first Scream, you had a group of 5 friends, one of whom, was a couple who were dating and yada, yada, yada. Yes, it is a remake of the very first Scream. And like all these soft reboots we saw before, it has lots and lots of callbacks to the original Scream. And because in the Scream movies they have the stab movies as an in-world horror movie series that made the events of the Scream thing stabber serial killers, they can actually refer to the stab movies as things that happen and refer to the stab things as tropes, and they talk about the stab movies all the time and how to survive a stab movie, and they even bring back Deputy Dewey and Gail Weathers and Sidney Prescott. So, uh, yeah, it's it's not a good movie. I think Jeffro said he liked it, and I just want to say, shame, shame, shame. It was not a good movie. I did not enjoy it. I have seen far, far worse movies, mind you. So, but then again, as we have established before, my standards for worst movies have been set because I have seen really, really bad movies. It fell flat. Just like all these other modern movies, none of the people were written like real people. They didn't sound like real people. They didn't talk like real people. And I'm not even talking like horror movies where you're like, no, you wouldn't go in the basement, you idiot. No real person would do that. I'm not even talking about the baseline standards for horror movies. I'm talking about the standards set by like the Matrix Revolutions, where they stand there and talk, and it's like you could see where the person writing the script had maybe heard of real people and had them described to them at one point in time, but had never actually met any real people in their life, and didn't really know how to implement a real person. So yeah, that's what Scream was. I'm not going to take any more time describing it because it was a bad movie, and I put like this mental limit of 5 minutes, and I'm 1 minute away from that. Um, I didn't enjoy it. And I loved the other Scream movies. I even liked four, and four was pretty much the definition of an unnecessary sequel, but at least it was a decent sequel. Um, I didn't live up to the other three, but it was all right. Not great, but all right. And then this movie was not even all right. It didn't even live up to the standards of all right. And talking about characters who return, they had Jamie Kennedy played the super smart guy who worked in the video store in the very first movie, who knew all about horror movies and told people how to survive. And his sister shows up in Scream 3 to bring the videotape so he can inform them. She comes back in this movie. So
Bringing them
when I
all
tell
back.
you, yeah, they really scraped the barrel of bringing back characters. They really went all out to try and find people to bring back for this movie.
My
That's
only
it.
advice, my only advice to people who want to subject themselves to that kind of bad horror movie, just go watch Birdemic. If you haven't seen it, it's the worst movie I've ever seen. And every time you catch something, you'd say, I've seen worse. I've seen Birdemic.
Yeah, it's sad because the Scream movie set a bar of quality that I don't know. I'm done. I'm moving on. Dornall, how was your week?
Hey man, my week was good. Not much to say. Me and the fam have been slamming games of Wingspan. Fantastic board game. Uh, we've been playing on the computer, on Steam, and in person at the table, pretty much non-stop all week. Got a lot of games of that in. I highly recommend it. It's a really fun game. Lots of strategy involved, but the real draw is the game is mostly made up of a deck of cards, and each card is a different bird. And these are real birds with illustrations that you would find in an almanac or a bird watcher's guide. Really beautiful hand drawn illustrations of each bird with a little bit of facts about the bird, and the facts actually play into the game. For example, you might have uh, Raptor, who, yeah, if you draw a card from the deck and it has a small wingspan, like as a small bird, the Raptor will prey on that bird and you'll get some points, right? I'm not going to go into more depth than that, but it's really addictive. The variance is very high with a couple hundred cards, all these different birds. It's a different game every time. I can't recommend it more. So that's all that's been going on in my world.
Well, I'll tell you how my week went. I saw Scream.
Oh no. You've already had your 5 minutes.
Yeah. So we have a guest who hasn't been on the show in over 2 years, which is a tragedy.
It is. It is. Welcome back, Nick Cole.
Hey, I am so happy to be here, guys.
This is so cool. We were actually just talking right before the show started, trying to figure out, man, how long has it been? I've got a timestamp in my chat program that I've used to contact my secret access to Nick. I've got December 14, 2019. That's how long it's been, and it's been way too long.
Yeah, the world was a different place. Now it is it is a burgeoning utopia, dysutopia, and I'm excited to play for the high score. May the odds ever be in your favor.
So
I'm with you.
I want to say this real quick because dystopia here. I went to shop for some bars of zest at Walmart, and they had one package of 8 bars of zest, nothing other on the shelf. So we have this, they're calling it a supply chain, whatever. And in the middle of the supply chain, whatever, we're stopping Canadian truckers from coming over the border and Mexican truckers from coming over the border. And that's not racist because I'm not talking about quote unquote Hispanic truckers. I'm talking about literal truckers driving from the country of Mexico. But illegal immigrants can come over all they want without being vaccinated. It's not just a dystopia. It's like the most satirical dystopia you could ever dream up. And I don't want to talk about it because we don't do politics on the show, but I can't wrap my head around how satirical reality has become. Reality has become more satirical. It is better at satirizing reality than the best satiricist I've ever read. And I don't know how that happened. When did that happen? I didn't get the memo that reality was now going to become a satire of reality. It
I
wasn't
I know when it happened. I said
2014. Is that what you're going to say?
no. I called it on the show. It happened. It happened in 2016. Cubs won the World Series. That was it. It's all over.
That's right. We did that last week, didn't we?
Mm.
Dang it, I was paying attention.
The Cubs violated the time-space continuum and collapsed the sanity underpinnings of Western civilization. And what
Absolutely.
we have since is cats living with dogs. Total anarchy.
Absolutely. Some say it was Harambe, but I think that's a red herring. I think it was the Cubs. So in our crazy new reality, Nick, what's new?
Let's see. Just cranking everything out over at Galaxy's Edge. Started a new imprint, publishing imprint, where we're publishing other authors in our sort of Wargate genre, and that's called Wargate Publishing, aptly. And the Wargate genre launched with a series called Forgotten Ruin, which is basically U.S. Army Rangers running around D&D with Carl Gustaf's and M240 Bravo crew-served weapons and basically going for their own personal high score. The tenets of the Wargate genre are 3. You must have a modern military unit. That's 1. 2 is you must have a fantasy setting. You could do anything from John Carter's Mars to Valhalla to Discworld, Ringworld, whatever. You're kind of riffing on it. You're not actually using that IP. And then the third element in the Wargate trifecta, shall we call it, is what we call the perpetual taco machine. And the perpetual taco machine is a 3D printer on crack. And if you're a hard science person who basically gets upset that lasers go boo boo in space and all that kind of stuff, then this genre is not for you. It's basically people just having fun. And the taco machine allows the U.S. Army Rangers to have a lot of Carl Gustaf rounds and 7.62 and 5.56 and print out all kinds of crazy weapons that they have, so that they can go dungeon delving or kill a dragon like they did in Violence of Action, or go after a Medusa Citadel like they did in Lay the Hate, or encounter, we won't call them drow, we'll call them lost elves, like they did in the latest one, Book of Joe. So it's just a lot of fun. It's basically modern military unit, flip through the D&D monster manual, pick a race, and then have the Rangers go wail on those monsters.
Okay, that sounds like fun.
You know what? People have dug it. It is fun. It's like right now, it's a moneymaker. It's kind of fun.
Peter Nealon, who we had on the show once before.
Yes, sir. The great Peter Nealon, I like to say.
Just released a book.
He's our first Wargate author.
And it's on sale still right now on Amazon for $99.
I think tonight at midnight is it. If you don't get Ice and Monsters right now, you have missed the boat, and you will pay full price when Larry Correa talks about it on Monday.
So we'll drop a link to it in the description.
Oh, please.
You can check that out for 99 cents until midnight tonight.
Yeah, Peter's great people, and he basically his background is recon Marine, and so he took some recon Marines and he basically sent them into Finnish and Norwegian mythology, and let me just say that hilarity ensues. No,
Holy cow.
it's actually a pretty grim tale of survival and killing sea trolls, and I think you will like it. It's good.
What was the name of that one again?
Ice and Monsters.
Ice and Monsters. I like it.
Ice and Monsters.
You're looking that up right now, aren't you?
Sure am.
Yeah.
You beat me to it.
Collect them all. Collect them all.
I put in PL Nealon into Amazon and it gave me a page of shampoo. And then you asked for the name of the book and I'm like, damn it, he's going to get it before me.
Yep.
So I just quit. You beat me.
I'm going to put that Amazon page. I'm going to put that on screen for anybody watching on YouTube. This is cool. I love this idea. Can you tell me, because it doesn't make sense to me. We had a question in chat. Wargate, is that what you're calling it? And what does that mean? Where's that from?
Wargate is basically, it just means like, in Forgotten Ruin, what is happening to the world is it's experiencing a nanoplague, and that nanoplague is actually destroying all modern technology and wiping everything out. And so the big brains at Area 51, they say, you know what, let's take all our special operators and let's send them through a QST quantum signal gate and basically fling them into the future. And we're going to only fling them about 2 years into the future when the plague fades. And then these, special operators, they will restart human civilization. This is Forgotten Ruin. Ice and Monsters has more of a Stephen King thinny that they go through. The mechanism of how they end up in a fantasy world isn't really like a super big important thing. It's just like, hey, we've got to get them into this fantasy world. But right there in Forgotten Ruin, they're only supposed to go 2 years into the future, but it's like quantum singularity. You don't really know what's going to happen. They end up 10,000 years in the future, and the world has gone all Tolkien, and they're in the Savage Lands, which is basically France, and they get involved fighting an orc horde to fight for their lives. So Wargate comes from, it's war, modern military units, and then the gate. You're going to go through gate, and you're going to end up in a fantastic world. Another one of our authors will be debuting in about 2 months, and that's Doc Spears, who wrote in the Galaxy's Edge series, the Dark Operator series. He actually is doing an outstanding series that is basically a special forces team, which Doc was special forces. And he is going to go to basically, in effect, a John Carter style Mars. So very fantastic Mars, very brutal, very savage. And then the really cool, and the writing is outstanding. And then the really cool big get was for that is we actually got Frank Frazetta's disciple, this guy, and he is doing a Frazetta style cover, and it's pretty damn beautiful actually. We had to PG it up a little from its initial things, but it's a beautiful cover. So that's Wargate, and what is Wargate? Like, you guys don't do politics on this channel, but those things are there and everything like that. What my partner and I, Jason Anspot, kind of decided is that people just really want to have fun. If they want a sermon, they'll go to church. And it's kind of a policy we have at Galaxy's Edge. We just want to entertain people. And, the Galaxy's Edge series is very much Star Wars meets G.I. Joe. And the Wargate series
over there.
The Wargate series is basically, studs whacking monsters and getting the occasional hot elf chick.
Good, clean fun.
Yeah, just fun. Doesn't everybody just want a little fun? Isn't everybody tired of fear and you're all gonna die in supply chain and Kamala Joe?
Yeah, it's like those old the renaissance of the old 80s style action movies. You just want to see Arnold Schwarzenegger mugging for the camera, saying stupid one-liners and shooting bad guys.
Yeah, and that's kind of what we're doing. And I'd like to think that, because we're writers who really care and want to be good writers, that we do try to bring, maybe sometimes an overheated literary Hemingway-esque aspect to it. But at the end of the day, if you've ever shot an automatic weapon, it's a lot of fun. And this is the literary equivalent of that. But you get to that's a great one. You get, like one of the like the over at the Galaxy's Edge Forgotten Ruin group on Facebook, there's a line in Forgotten Ruin where this saw gunner, their position is getting pushed by a hill giant. When the orcs have a hill giant as their heavy, and they're crossing this river and everything like that, and the saw gunner can't waste the hill giant, so he grabs the Carl Gustav recoilless rifle and just vapes it right there, just blows off the half the side of its face, and it just collapses over in the river in a big steaming pile of mess. And the orcs like, oh shit, we lost our heavy retreat, they take off like that. And the gunner turns around and he goes, hey, Carl G don't care. And now that's like that's become a meme and all that kind of stuff. And it's very much like Predator was probably like, if you were a kid like me and your friend said, hey, we're going to the movies on Saturday, and you're just happy to be with people, because that's how I was, and I had no idea what Predator was. And then you walk in and you see all these great dudes, and they're going through the jungles of Latin America, and then suddenly there's this monster and everything like that. That is I think that's like what we're doing in these books, and it's pretty. At the end of the day, it's really fun. At the beginning of the day too. So all we're doing is having fun. You want to have fun? Go read Ice and Monsters. Go read Forgotten Ruin. Doc Spears, John Carter series is called Warlord, and we've got about 3 to 4 more series coming online. The great Dungeons and Dragons designer, Gary Gygax's disciple, Jim Ward, he partnered with one of our authors, J.R. Handley, and they're basically writing a striker unit going up against the D&D module written by Tracy Hickman Pharaoh. So it feels very much like that. So that'll be kind of fun. It won't be kind of fun. It'll be a lot of fun.
Heck yeah.
Yeah, so that's what we're doing. Does this sound intriguing? Go to Wargate Books and sign up, and you will be on an email list, and you will get all these things. Or maybe we can funnel the authors over here to Geek Gab, and they can download all their deranged stories of using modern kinetic weaponry on orcs and mermaids. I like it's fun. In Lay the Hate, the Rangers have to come ashore in North Africa, which is called the Lost Coast now. And there's a Medusa citadel there. And the mermaids that are in the water, like we all in modern thing, like, oh, our little girls want to be mermaids and everything like that. Well, I went back to the roots where, mermaids were kind of like vampires in the water. And they almost smoke their fair share of rangers, with their songs and their vampire teeth and their womanly charms.
It's always womanly for the top half. Yes. And then the bottom half, you're like, oh, whoa, no, I'm good.
Yeah, exactly. Mermaids want a hug under the water where you can't breathe.
Right.
Yeah. I made it my goal to finish the last book of Forgotten Ruin before we started the show today.
Yes.
And so I was supposed to do it yesterday, and then I had stuff happen yesterday, and I was going to finish it today. And then I had a bunch of stuff happen this morning. And so I'm only 66% through the book of Joe.
Yes.
I had to stop right in the middle of the battle in the library.
Oh, that I really like that, because I was finally allowed to do what had really, I like playing with the modern weapons, the modern military units. But the reality is the Rangers are now in the equivalent of a Bronze Iron Age civilization. And so they run into the Akkadian legionnaires, which are basically Roman centurions. They have an interesting captain as their leader. And it was now finally time to use old school, big battle, Bronze Age scrum type tactics. And I really enjoyed writing that scene, which is really a lot about, the dance movement of line infantry, shield infantry, spears, and as a war leader, managing all those things, when you've got these sort of like savage lost elves, screaming out of the desert in these suicide attacks, and they're riding their heavies are mounted spiders with sort of like the old kind of like Hannibal style elephant. That's how big these spiders are. And they've got, 2 archers and spear throwers up there, and they're having fun. And there's only 2 rangers in the Book of Job because of the incidents of the book before. And so those 2 rangers kind of like they have to jump in and help the Roman centurions and sort of like hold the line. And so like that took it to a whole new fun level. And then later the centurions get some fun toys to play with. But I won't ruin that for Daddy Warpig.
I also want to say that without spoiling anything for the audience, the tactic the Suicide Elves are using, I thought was fabulous. As soon as that came up in the scene, I was like, "Oh, that's beautiful! I love that. I love how it plays out." So I found that neat.
Yeah, tactics in the Forgotten Ruin series and in Wargate in general are really important, and that's why a lot of the writers have military experience, and so it's an interesting thing because you set yourself a problem when you write these books. Step away from the fact that you have rangers. If you just have the modern, infantry unit, a platoon, as demonstrated kind of in the movie Platoon, they carry an incredible amount of firepower for 19 to 30-year-olds or 26-year-olds. And then you bring in rangers who have an almost obsessive love of explosives and the tactics and things like that. And suddenly them fighting orcs, especially if they have like 240 Bravo machine guns that you can start talking, and then they have claymores, and they have new smart claymores now, and then you have the support of the recoilless rifle, and you have a bunch of guys with M320 grenade launchers, and everybody's got an MK, a Mark 18 carbine, and all these kinds of things. Like, this is a very powerful force, even if they've got mortar support and possibly they've even got some drone support and stuff like that. So the fun thing then in the Forgotten Ruin series is taking your monsters and organizing them militarily, because you know what, they've been surviving, and in Forgotten Ruin, humanity is pushed back to just a few cities and they hug the coast. Most of the world is now ruled by large tribes of monsters, trolls, ogres, lost elves, all these kinds of things, and
Undead.
Undead and things like that. And so you've got to give those guys tactics that compete. And the first thing in the Forgotten Ruin is you learn is that, like, you can have 240 Bravo machine guns talking back and forth and laying an excessive amount of traversing and plunging fire and all that kind of stuff. But the orcs are a savage warrior culture that would probably make Spartans look like wimps. And the orcs don't understand, gunfire. They just know that their guys are dropping, and they're all worked up either on some kind of leaf that they're chewing or orc Valhalla, and they're gonna push through, and they've got 5,000 buddies. Well, your 240 Bravo is going to go forbidden popsicle, and the barrel's going to start to glow after 600 rounds. So you're not even a quarter of the way to wasting an orc horde of 5,000. So now, you've got to give the monsters some fun tactics to fight the modern military units. And that's kind of, it's like when you're writing it, it's kind of like a little fun game of chess.
Sorry, I was on mute for a second because I've been dying ever since you said forbidden popsicle. And I knew exactly what you were talking about.
When your barrel goes forbidden popsicle, you got problems. You should have barrel changed.
I had a question about... my question can wait. DW, go ahead.
Oh, I was about to. If you're going to ask a question about Forgotten Ruin, you better go now, because I'm about to abruptly change the subject.
About Forgotten Ruin and Wargate in general, you and all the other authors have a lot of military experience, and of course that's what you're known for. That really, from experience, accurate descriptions of these people, their units, their weapons and tactics, and everything like that. Is that something that you're going to stick to Is that another spoken or unspoken tenet or requirement of the Wargate imprint? Are you ready to guarantee that you're going to get high quality military or accurate stories and descriptions from
Yeah,
you and your authors?
that's a tenet really of GE, and it's a tenet of Jason Ansbach and I, and we're very pro veteran and getting veterans involved in writing, because we see it's great for them on a lot of levels, and a lot of them have a lot of great stories to tell. And our audience has served. We had a World War II guy who read our books. We have Korean guys, we have Vietnam vet guys, we have Cold War guys like myself, we have GWOT guys and things like that. And there's a few things that happen. Like, one thing, you're always going to get veterans who discount, or you're going to get readers who like, discount your experience because they have a minimal amount of knowledge or very specialized knowledge, and they're going to say, oh, you obviously don't know what you're talking about. But the reality is if you look at the vast reader base of Galaxy's Edge and Forgotten Ruin, it's a lot of people who come for the authenticity. Having said that, even myself, who served in a line infantry unit and things like that a million years ago, it's funny when I will write things, and so the way that we keep ourselves honest, and the way that we keep ourselves technically accurate is, in the Forgotten Ruins series, we have 3 actual rangers who read the books and the chapters as we go, and they advise and comment. And one of those rangers is a pretty legendary master breacher. And another one of those rangers is the guy that basically held the main supply base as an officer around Fallujah. And then the other guy was a ranger who was in during my time and then went back to the GWOT. So these people, and I don't think it's unknown that Jason Ansbach and myself are unabashedly pro Ranger. We see them as the best soldier in the entire world, like bar none. For being a soldier, everybody has like secret skills, and everybody's a great soldier. Like I know in my own experience, there have been line infantrymen that I just, like no jump tab, just leg infantrymen, and they were some of the best, everything like that. But the Rangers approach, being premier operators, and even I think the special forces community would say, oh, they're more shock troops or whatever. But the way that they approach the culture is the epitome of warrior culture, and we think that there's so, and we already have a lot of feedback from the Ranger community that they're really into these books, and like sometimes like, like basically some of the things that are written out of there are just verbatim out of like how to get through Ranger school. In fact, like if you look at the Talker character arc, he's basically going through Ranger school, and that's what the Book of Joe is about. He's attached as an army linguist, but he comes to join the cult of Ranger and things like that, and so it's very much about that. And so we insist that we have these rigorous standards about how we approach the military, and that you're not going to have this, there I was, surrounded by 8, like in G, like 8, enemy space marines. So I pulled out my dagger and started cutting. Like that doesn't happen. We talk about things like traversing fire and plunging fire and effective fire and kill zones. And a lot of the times a battle is about leadership and management and knowing how to do a needle decompression and things like that. So it's not just rah, then we killed them all. There's a lot of things that go into it. And what we've found is that's the value add for most of the readers, like whether they are having people who have served, or like, I think a lot of people just really pro military and they love to learn about the military and things like that. And so we want to represent that. We have a larger mission too that Jason and I have always had, is we know that, okay, we're not going to get political here, but we know that there is a war in the culture on masculinity and boys. And, they'll call the cops on you if 2 boys are playing with guns around the school, and, like stuff we all used to do as kids. So what we feel that we're doing with Forgotten Ruin is we're writing about, just kind of like Heinlein did, in a certain way, something that's very pro military, and very pro a positive view of men who choose to be warriors. And so we're hoping that will inform the next generation, and that they, because a nation always needs soldiers, and I hope we have a nation and all those kinds of things. So we're trying to provide a very pro military culture. And if you look at the Rangers, the Ranger Creed, Ranger ethics, those kind of things, this is a great mission to live your life by. And so those things embody this. Now, we have all kinds of writers. We have military writers. We have some writers who haven't served and everything like that. And people will say, oh, can I, pitch you guys a story or do whatever, but I didn't serve. And it's like, we can write these stories, and all of us, who served in some capacity or some level or whatever, we could vet shame or whatever and blah, blah, blah. The end of the day, the greatest military fiction writer ever is a nearsighted dude who sold insurance. That was Tom Clancy. Like, hands down, he's the greatest. I just had a long conversation with an 82nd Airborne scout who was sat in on a question and answer session with Colonel Petraeus when he was colonel, when Tom Clancy was down there interviewing for a book that he was writing about the Airborne Infantry Regiment. And the respect they had for that guy, for his accuracy to get it right and things like that. That's what we aim for, whether we served or we don't serve. We have this massive, layer of veterans who tell us their stories, and then veterans who read chapter by chapter, and they call bullshit where it's bullshit, and then we get it right, or they inform us even more, and then it gets even better. And that's the special feature we have, and I think that's really cool, and it's neat to be a part of. Long answer. I hope that there was valuable content.
I get it. Thank you. I just got a note. You should talk to yourself or whoever is working on your Wargate site. Apparently, people are having trouble signing up right now.
Okay, I will tell Tech right now to get that fixed. You can also go over to the Galaxy's Edge site and sign up for the newsletter there, and you'll get some cross feed there. And that's a great way to stay informed. But I'm going to send Tech a thing right now.
That's really cool what you said about authors and veterans, getting both in there and really appreciating the veterans. I think, well, I'd have thought that maybe that'll veer too much into politics, so maybe I'll hold it for now.
Okay.
But I agree in like with your general sentiment about the culture war, and it's good to have positive portrayal of people who, in popular fiction and culture, are often portrayed in a negative light.
Yeah, and like, it's during the GWOT, we had, like, when we started writing Galaxy's Edge, a major corporation came to us and said, we want to partner with you because you guys are the only ones writing for soldiers, and we want to be part of that because we're really pro soldier and everything like that. Well, that was really prior to 2019. Then the events, without getting political, of 2019 and 2020 began to shift the focus of most corporations to want to, quote unquote, virtue signal in another direction. And now I think we're seeing an outright evisceration and downgrading of the military that was, and almost a humiliation of that military by, it's real. I mean, if you see some of the things that happen and then you see the net result, you're like, this has to be contrived. Mm-hmm. And so whatever a government wants to do, or whatever a political cabal wants to do, or whatever, fine, you're welcome to do those things. This is America. Everybody can do what they want. But what Jason Allensbach and I are going to do is we are going to show positive, true, as they write about orcs and hill giants and dragons and like that, but a true embodiment of warrior culture. And it's not all Jack Bauer. Sometimes it's a 2 DUI specialist with 2 ex-stripper wives who just ain't gonna quit, when people start exchanging kinetic hate, and that's and it's sometimes people who, they get a taste of something and they get, as Tom Sizemore says in heat, the action is the juice. And then sometimes it's about the burden of leadership and how sometimes you look at certain types of leaders, whether it's the weapons team leader who seems to have a perpetual hate on for everybody who doesn't, soldier at his level, but you come to find out really it's his fear of failure, of anybody dying on his watch. And then you move to the voice of wisdom in a unit, and it's a sergeant major who sometimes you just kind of see him with a cup of coffee, making sure the flag is getting hung up right. But that's the guy who's the repository of all wisdom and has forgotten everything. Has forgotten more about, hump and a rock than you'll ever actually know in your life at your little 22-year-old level. And then you get to that ground force commander, the leader of a unit, the officer, and sometimes there's these attitudes about I think one of the things that my experience when I was in is, as I looked up to the officers I had, to me in a lot of ways they were like Achilles, but that was a different generation. And then I would listen to the stories of the guys coming out of the GWAT, and I saw that something had changed in the officer corps. And so I wanted to go back to those kind of Achilles leaders who embodied what you see at the Fort Benning School of Infantry, which is follow me. And it's not all Captain Morgan poses and Tom Hanks speeches. Sometimes that guy's got a perpetual look of indigestion on his face because he's trying to keep it all together and make sure everybody doesn't get killed. And then, you've got to go smoke the enemy. Things have got to get done. And then that guy turns into a were-tiger because of the stress. So it's there's these, like you've got to, I think Forgotten Ruin in a lot of ways is Flintstone vitamins. They're fun to eat, but they're good for you on a certain level. And it's not a big sermon and everything like that. It's a lot of fun, but are you probably going to learn how to conduct a raid by reading Forgotten Ruin? Yeah, you probably will. Are you going to learn how to conduct an attack on a fixed position? Yeah, you probably will. Are you some little grommet out there looking around in life and you've played Call of Duty and that's fun and everything like that, and you're like, well, these Rangers are interesting. What's this about? And then maybe you go down and talk to your recruiter and you ask for a RIP contract. I think they call it something now, RASP contract. And you go and you try and you do and you become something that, whether you're a Marine or a Ranger or soldier or whatever, that is something that you will be proud of to the rest of your life, no matter whatever happens, blah, blah, blah. There's something like you look at those old guys, driving around the golf carts, and they've got the Marine hat on and a stogie. And it's like a lot happened in their life, but man, that was a moment that they dug. And so I hope we encourage people to do that. We should probably talk about Strange Company. Sorry.
I hope that's where DW is going, because I was wondering about that.
Yeah.
I was going to abruptly change the subject to
Good. Sorry.
Galaxy's Edge.
Galaxy's Edge or Strange Company?
Oh, Strange Company. Let's do that.
We can talk Galaxy's Edge.
I really like Strange Company.
Thank you.
Yeah, we do want to talk about Galaxy's Edge before we go, but let's talk Strange Company.
Sure.
I don't know anything about it but the blurb. Have you read it, DW?
Oh, yeah. I just said I really liked it.
Oh.
I mean, you could look at that cover. That cover is pretty boss. It's by Pascal Blanche, who is he was one of the artists on Dune, and he has a very surreal, almost like modern take on 70s science fiction pieces. And so I think he just really nailed that cover. I could not get him to come back for the second cover, but I've got another artist who's doing another even freakier thing, because the Strange Company is in a lot of ways it's Forgotten Ruin and Galaxy's Edge adjacent, but it's more like I don't care what people say or whatever. It's the Black Company in space, and I like that, and that was fun.
See, my feeling about the book when I finished reading it is I thought, this kind of seems like all the ideas that Nick had that were too strange to put in Galaxy's Edge.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, this is like a lot of the times Jason is the voice of reason for some of the wacky shit I want to do. And so since this was a solo project, I was just like, here's what it really ended up being. It ended up being a love letter to science fiction, because there are a lot of tropes in there. And I think, and he did it masterfully. No, but I did it subtle enough that they're in the story. It's just stuff that I wanted to write about. I mean, Planet of the Apes is in there. You may not know it is Planet of the Apes, but I always wanted to write about apes with guns. And so it's in there. And there's a lot of sort of lost Starship Crash stuff. And then there's some Doom Marine, and then there's some Warhammer. And it's just like, but it's with those serial numbers filed off, and it's subtle. And it's just sort of like if you drank a nice glass of wine and someone was like, oh, like all those highfalutin terms the wine snobs, use, like hints of oak and, leather notes. It's like, yeah, hints of, Planet of the Apes and notes of Warhammer 40K. And it's just like, but at the end of the day, I had been on a Black Company jag for a couple of years. And there's things I like about the Black Company and things that I don't like. But I liked the premise of a group of mercenaries that are kind of hard to get along with among each other. But at the end of the day, they're for each other. And then I like some of the character types, and I wanted to play with those. And so, Strange Company is basically a mercenary unit at the edge of there's some Blade Runner in there. There's some Terminator in there. The Strange Company is a long-lived, much storied mercenary unit, sort of very much down on their luck at the end of what is a change of culture in a galactic culture, in which the dominating culture, would the elites who own Earth and don't let you around, they're kind of coming to the end of their reign, and the upstarts are starting to tear away flesh from the carcass. And Strange Company gets involved with one of these monarchs, they're called, and they end up on a pretty hairy mission. But it was a lot of fun to write. I like that book, and I'm working on book 2 right now, which is called Voodoo Warfare.
Voodoo Warfare. So you just grab onto a doll and sit in your bunker and jab the enemy to death?
Well, the character that became, I think the character that everybody ended up liking out of Strange Company is this character called Stink Eye. And so the monarchs, they're into transhumanism and things like that. They take people and experiment on them, and they do really wacky stuff to them. And so with the Stink Eye character, he basically became like a war wizard, but he's with a modern military. There's not magic and stuff like that. It's just he can do things kind of like psionics and psychic stuff like that. But he's this sort of miserable alcoholic and with a total hate on for the rest of the universe. But he also is the oldest member in the company, and he's their lucky totem. And he's a warrant officer, and there are 3 platoons in Strange Company. There's Reaper platoon, which is basically all the noobs. There's 4 platoons. Then there's Ghost, which is your snipers and scouts. There's Dog platoon, which is the line infantry, and think very much like Platoon. Tom Berenger's character and his platoon, good old boys, and really dedicated, heartbreakers and life takers. And the whole thing is told from Reaper platoon, from their sergeant, who's this sort of very much PTSD, guy he's a sergeant, and he's just trying to get everybody through it. And Voodoo platoon is where all the freaks are. And Voodoo is basically, they're different. There's a guy in there who's basically disembodied because the monarchs basically reversed his existence. But his special ability is he can just basically make things disappear. So they use that in military operations to like suddenly drop buildings on people and things like that. There's a PSYOP specialist who's very Hunter S. Thompson. And then there's Stink Eye, and Stink Eye basically can create negative emotions in mass groups of people. And so what's a mercenary unit that's outgunned going to do? They're going to cause these waves of fear or panic in their enemies that Stink Eye can do, and then use that to their advantage. Their PSYOPs guy basically uses hallucinogenics in the form of gas to gain some sort of combat multiplier. So it's a very by hook or crook military unit, and they get a lot done. And they fight with each other, and they all have stories, and it's interesting. But at the end of the day, there's a law in Strange Company, and it's strangers to the universe, brothers to the end. And that's like, they may hate each other's guts, they may do all these things, but at the end of the day, they're going to lock shields and get it done.
Sounds really entertaining to watch. In particular, I have a very vivid image of a soldier huffing a can of paint before wading into battle. Just
It would at one point the psyops basically guy doses them all with LSD as a counter psychotropic to fight the other guys that he dosed with a narcotic gas. So it gets very insane and things like that. But it's weird because it's it's like Forgotten Ruin in certain ways. There's a lot of fantastic weirdness going on. It's very much a Blade Runner style universe. It's cyberpunk. It's very dark. Corporations, overstate, all this kind of like weird, messed up stuff spanning across about 134 worlds. But at the end of the day, like Forgotten Ruin and like Galaxy's Edge, all stories like in Galaxy's Edge and Forgotten Ruin and Strange Company are Space Marine stories. And all Space Marine stories are really about soldiers. They're not so much about the aliens or the monsters. They are about soldiers and soldiers' values and the way that soldiers talk and the interactions and the things that they have to face and the hardships. And then this sort of elusive glory that they're always sort of pursuing and trying to put their handprint in the clay mud of the universe and hope that it means something. Those are truths that just echo. Those are just, that's what young men do, and then the monsters become the interesting part, but the real drama and that stuff, that's what goes on with soldiers. All Space Marine stories are really about soldiers. They're not so much about the monster or everything like that. But then the fun that I learned as being an actor after I got out of the military, in Hollywood, the fun is playing the villains. The fun is playing the monsters, because that's where you can get really weird and chew some scenery and do fun stuff. And so that, if you can balance like some really good drama and character development and arc and all those kinds of things, and then set it against a very interesting tapestry, whether it's Dungeons and Dragons or Blade Runner or Star Wars, I think that you enter a really cool intersection of fun for the reader.
There, that's it. Final word.
That's it. Done. See you guys later.
Had to leave that one hanging. I love it. Of course the Star Wars, the ones that you mentioned, Star Wars and Blade Runner, everything, they do have sort of interesting and memorable villains and antagonists. I mean, Darth Vader being the big obvious one.
Yeah.
But
or
yeah,
Roy Batty in Blade Runner, and it's all very interesting. And I would just say, Strange Company resonated in a way that I didn't think it was going to, and a lot of veterans really dug it because it is very much a soldier's story, and there's a lot of things that they can relate. And it's not necessarily in a certain way what people think. It verges sometimes on stream of consciousness, but there's some pretty good action and just plain old fun in there. But there are some truths. And then one of the realities is getting the narrator for the audiobook, Christopher Ryan Grant. That guy is, he's beautiful as a narrator. I mean, he just has a great voice that really captures the pathos in these characters, and he's exploding. And so I get messages pretty much on a daily basis from people, and they're like, I've listened to Strange Company 3 times. When's the next book going to be ready? So like, for some people, it's an addictive listen, and that's interesting. I don't get paid extra for it. I just think it's interesting.
Do they really explain why?
I think that it reminds them of people that they knew, and it helps them. I don't think, I don't want to go so far into PTSD or things like that. But I was a soldier, and I think back about the people I knew, and in my mind, they're always still young, but it's been several years. They're old people now, broken like me, gray hair. Maybe you don't got hair, whatever. And I think it feels familiar in that respect. And there, there's some really dark soldierly humor in there, and sometimes you need that humor to cope with things and being in the military. And I think it resonates on that level. So I think they just enjoy it, and I think they enjoy it for the characters and the interaction of them as soldiers. Then it's fun that some of them are fantastic, and then it's fun that sometimes they're having to fight chimpanzees with automatic shotguns.
If I could offer a theory, it sounds like the soldiers in Voodoo Company, they're the ones that were experimented on. So you're putting the trauma and pain and stuff that they've been through into sharp relief. It's not simply PTSD. These guys have literally been like genetically modified and messed with, and psychically messed with. Like, these guys have been seriously screwed up just in an attempt to create a super soldier. So that puts that at top of mind, in front and center, to really think about it.
Yeah, I think so. I think that, and the truth of is, and I hope this isn't a controversial statement, but in my own life, I was brainwashed as a soldier. I was one way, and then I went in the military and I became another way, and that's a good way. I learned a lot of value, but the process that you go in through in the military forges you into a different person. You're being brainwashed when you watch the Super Bowl. You're being brainwashed when you listen to certain types of music. I mean, brainwashing is more prevalent than people know. But I think that you're absolutely spot on, and I hadn't thought about it in that way. But it is interesting because the freaks in Voodoo very much are these glaringly damaged people who have either motivations of revenge or withdrawal, or actually think that the damage was great. I think that's personified in three of those people. And then the soldiers who would seem normal, part of Orion's, who's the main character, Sergeant Orion, part of his job in Strange Company is to get down everybody's story before you die. And that way you kind of go down into the permanent record of a unit that's been around for a long time. And so what you find out is those guys who think they're normal, they're intimately aware of how damaged they are. And then sometimes they dealt with that in a very positive method. And then sometimes they want to stick one last middle finger to the universe. But like I said, it does be, it's weird because it's a really fun book, but then it's deep on this level that I hadn't intended. When I signed the contract, they're like, "Hey, you're really good at writing Space Marine novels. Would you just write another Space Marine novel, a trilogy?" And I'm like, "Sure." And I just intended to write, what if Blade Runner were Space Marines? And then kind of all this sort of depth came out of it. And so it still is, what if Blade Runner were Space Marines? But then there's like, I don't know. I think I just tapped into either some of my own military experiences or a lot of the military experiences that, people kind of do the Orion thing with me now. They just write and they'll say like, "Hey, I want to tell you about something that happened to me and you can use it." And I'm like, okay. And then I become like a priest in a certain way. And I feel it's important that I take care of what I've been told.
I've got a question from chat real quick before we go to Galaxy's Edge. They're idly musing about other types of military and warrior cultures. Are you interested or working on European or Asian markets for any of your books or authors or stories about other warrior cultures?
Yeah, we are going into the EU now with German translations of Galaxy's Edge, and that's been an ongoing project for a year now. And Jason Ansbach, we hired full-on translators. We didn't just go like, "Hey, let's just put it through Google Translate," which people do. And the German market is huge. We took our time and we decided to actually hire. We have a German translator, and I think we have an Italian translator. And they're just slowly working their way through it. And I'm pretty sure like in the next couple of months, we start dropping novels there. We wanted to make sure we had, because the secret always in Amazon to release is to have a there. So if you release a book, Strange Company is a mistake in that I just took the money and like started putting books out. It's not how we release in Forgotten Ruin or Galaxy's Edge, where we like, month to month or month every 2 months, you're going to keep getting hit with this series. And that's the best way to go. So that's what will be happening there. I don't think we have any Asian plans yet, but we should. But I think we're going into the EU, Germany specifically, and then Italy came along for the ride with another translation.
Oh,
yeah.
Dungeons and Dragons is huge in Japan.
Yeah.
Big in Japan.
Yeah.
And I am utterly certain that Forgotten Ruin would be big in Japan.
Yeah, they would liken it to isekai, which is their gate fiction. Yeah. And there's shades and elements, there's differences that allow us to call it Wargate, but I really do think it would be a perfect fit for Asian Japan specifically in a lot of ways.
In fact, I think it would be big in Japan tonight. I think it would be big in Japan, all right. Big in Japan through the Eastern Seas, so blue. Sorry.
In Forgotten Ruin, Japan became a return to a feudal culture and became samurais. The nano plague the nano plague, like, it gave the main character psionics, and it gave the ground force commander, it turned him into a were-tiger. So sometimes, like, about 10% of any population in Forgotten Ruin begins to become monsters. And over 10,000 years, those monsters form nations and tribes. But because the Rangers got dropped into it, one guy became a Minotaur. He's cool. His name's Monroe. They had to have the Forge print him a Special Forces E3 M60, because that was the only thing that would kind of fit his ability, his torso and ability to aim and everything like that. So that really works for him. One of them became a wizard. The guy who actually in the unit was kind of the dog's body, the guy that is on permanent, like perpetual duty. He's a geek. He's like half Korean, half American, and everybody kind of hates him. Mainly the NCOs, because they just don't think he's a ranger. And then he turns out to have an affinity for high level magic, and he becomes their wizard. And now he's basically like, now the entire unit loves him, and because he's the one who knows the most about Dungeons and Dragons. And he'll always tell you in the book, like, I don't know if that applies to this world, but it kind of does. And so they constantly, he's like the source of all wisdom for them regarding, how they're going to kill a manticore, how they're going to kill a dragon and things like that. But in Japan, they returned to, over 10,000 years, they returned to a feudal samurai, shogun warlord culture, and they all became 8-foot gorilla people. So now you have gorilla samurais in Japan. I don't know if the Japanese will be offended by that, but it's pretty freaking awesome, because we just met the first one. I'm ruining Book of Joe. So sorry.
I want to know. I just want to see the swords those things wield.
Oh, he just cuts people in half with Toru for the win.
My goodness.
And he's a gorilla too. He could just bite you, or he can just rip your arms out.
It's like they don't really need swords, I guess.
No, but they have them in samurai armor, and it's awesome.
or one of those. I read once that the samurai actually rarely used their swords in battle. It was often the spears, and sometimes their bows. So I could imagine a gorilla with one of those long spears with the wicked curved blade on the front. Let's do it.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So Bradford Walker he concurs. You guys should try to get that over there in the Japanese market. I think they'd love it.
All right. I it wasn't on my radar, but I always learn from people, and so Monday morning at the GE meeting, I will tell our staff to begin operations to invade Japan.
Excellent. DW, now's your time to shine.
No, I was just kind of casually mentioning that Galaxy's Edge is in the middle of season 2, and the next book is coming out real soon now.
Yes, sir.
Hey, I noticed something really weird about your covers. Is that something you can talk about? Something weird happened on Amazon the past couple of weeks. Is that true?
Yeah. Well, what happened is they took us down. And so like about, was it 2 weeks ago on a Saturday night at 6 o'clock when I'm done, my partner called and said, "Hey, we're out of the store. We've been kicked out." And I'm like, "What?" So he sent me the letter and it basically said, "You are in violation and have multiple accounts and you've violated terms of service and you're out."
Huh.
And then the last line of it was, "You can no longer make another account. You're done forever." And I know people that's happened to, and they are done forever for sure. And they've tried to go make fake accounts, and then Amazon will hunt you down and get you there. And so, you know, the bulk of our money earnings, I should say, comes from Amazon, just like everybody else. It's the gorilla in the room. So it happened on a Saturday night, and everybody freaked out in the company. We have a pretty good staff now, and I thought to myself, I said, "This seems like a hack." Because it's a Saturday night and somebody's, running around there, and Russia and Ukraine are at war with each other, and Russia's messing with us, in cyber warfare terms, and the United States military and government keeps most of its stuff. And I don't think it's a very wise move on the Amazon servers, cloud servers. So my feeling was this is probably a result of why the internet sucks and why all our devices are constantly being hacked and all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, it'll probably work itself out by Monday. My partner, Jason Ansbach, he felt that it was that Amazon had probably patched in some new feature and some kind of like, like if you have multiple accounts and it pinged us, which we don't have multiple accounts. And I knew it was bullshit because I will constantly come up with random ways to violate the terms of service, not like trying to violate the terms of service, but I'll be like, oh, maybe we could do this strategy. And Jason Ansbach has actually read the terms of service and is very litigious and right on about it. And he will always tell me like, nope, can't do that. That would be a violation of terms of service. So I know that we are a company, and I'm very proud of that fact, that conducts its affairs above board, and we do not do any shenanigans. Even though I might accidentally try to do a shenanigan, and he'll point that out like, no, that would violate this.
Then there was my theory.
Yeah.
My theory was, because I've seen this happen to way too many friends of mine.
Yes.
Was that there was just somebody with just enough authority at Amazon to be able to carry out a grudge.
Yep. And I honestly, I don't. One of the things, like after what happened after Control Alt Revolt, is I did not want to make my career being the guy that happened to. So I try to I just try to move on and do my thing and give the benefit of the doubt. But the truth of it is I think 50% it was a chill warning. I do another podcast that's pretty political over on Substack. It's called Control Alt Revolt, the podcast. And after January 6th, I had people go to one of my publishers and say that I was an insurrectionist, everything like that. And the CEO, this is a pretty big publishing company, came to me on a Sunday morning, wanted an emergency meeting, and you can't say these things and blah, blah, blah. I didn't say anything. I just said, oh, look, people are doing, but I have enemies. And I even had a Hollywood deal last year, and I was told, point blank, like, we're not doing it because your audience is a right-wing Christian audience, and we're not making films for them. And that was pretty flabbergasting and things like that. So that's just, it's like the Larry Correia thing. That's just part and parcel of doing that. Like, and we won't get political or anything like that, but I feel at the end of the day, it was a chill warning. And it might have been a beta test to see if they could do it, but it is amazing the amount of people who are maybe libertarian to conservative to moderate whose accounts just suddenly accidentally break. And then sometimes they don't even, I know one guy who I would tell you is maybe secretly libertarian, is not super open about it or whatever. And his account suddenly had the same thing happened. And then someone said, oh, there was some content that you wrote that was offensive and blah, blah, blah. And it's just like, it's the reality. Like it's the Joe Rogan thing. It's the reality is there are people out there that can no longer have a discussion, and they can no longer tolerate the fact that you think differently. We are moving toward a society that is going to, that is, if that side wins, it is a society where you must absolutely think like them. You will not be allowed to participate. And I don't, I don't think that's going to win. I don't think that's going to work because we're Americans, and we are Al Qaeda. Like you just can't tell us what to do. It's not going to happen. But it's weird. It does seem that there are a group of people that seem to use technology and big tech and services to not just silence you, but get rid of you. And I'm very concerned about where that's going to lead. But I do have a tendency to agree with you, DW, that I think more it was a chill. It was like, be ashamed if something happened to your company. So, and it's interesting. I had a guy yesterday, I was just talking about Evangeline Lilly, who was the Lost actress who showed up to basically say she was against vaccines. And I just said, oh, if I ever have a book that becomes a movie, I'd love to have her in that, because I support that. And I know when you do those kind of things in Hollywood, because I was in Hollywood, guess what? You don't get to work anymore. So I think there's a new paradigm shift where a lot of us are starting to make our own content. And I think Jason and I have actually been working with some producers in Texas, and we're thinking about making a very low budget Galaxy's Edge post-apocalyptic movie. So I think those things are going to come to the forefront, and they're going to be more popular. And maybe we could do that, like with Gina Carano, like how she did, her thing. So I think that sometimes they come along and try to chill you and get you to stop doing that. And what that did to Jason and I on the Monday morning, the account, like we basically went to our audience and we said, hey, can you go on Twitter and hashtag this and see if we can get our account back up? And because we are successful, that happened. Just like it happened for another romance author. She did the same thing. And we had a consigliere tell us like, hey, you should do it. It worked for her. If you didn't have a big audience or whatever, you didn't get served. So that's kind of wacky about Amazon. Like literally you have to use Twitter as a help desk ticket to get your shit fixed. Excuse my language. Like that's whole levels of wrong I don't even want to get into, but it's concerning, and it tells me more than it doesn't tell me. So instead I got together with Jason Ansbach on Monday because we had just looked, zero revenue going forward in the face. And I said, I'm kind of getting tired because everybody knows I mouth off a lot. And we get threatened a lot. I've had about 4 or 5 cancellation efforts over the 11 years that I've been publishing. And one day, maybe somebody's going to get lucky and get me canceled. I don't know. Jason says I'm cancel proof, but I don't know. You can always get somebody. And I said, you know what we should do today? We should pretend that worked, that we really were taken off of Amazon. And we because we're weak. And that's the thing we both had to admit to each other. We had to say, like, if they would have taken us down, we would have had no recourse. Look at Parler. Look at that. You're done. And it's like, great. All the money you invested and your mortgage payments and your kids' braces and all this kind of stuff. Like, great. We didn't like what you had to say. So we just ruined your family. That's really, not to put too fine a point on it, but that's what you do. That's what they're doing to us. And I said, I feel very vulnerable and exposed. And Jason said, yeah, I feel the same way too. And I said, what we should do, what we've realized is we have all our eggs in one basket. And he said, yeah. And I'm like, what we should do is maybe not do that anymore. And he'd kind of been saying all this to me for a long time. And I kind of maybe hadn't been listening. And so he was more ahead of the curve. And so what we did on Monday, that Monday following, we began to implement a new system where all our eggs weren't in the Amazon basket. So we're removing titles out of the store, out of exclusivity, and we're moving to a subscription model. So we started we have a subscription model and have always had it even before we started publishing, because we had these true believers that were really into Star Wars meets G.I. Joe. And so then we basically decided that we were going to take more of our titles and offer that, like, if you subscribe, you're going to, like, for $10 a month, you're going to get like 11 books, including Strange Company's in there if you subscribe. and you're going to get every book that we publish the moment that it comes out of editing. You get, the first thing before it goes up on Amazon. So like if you basically were beating KU in a certain respect, like we're giving you all our stuff through the subscription. And then on top of that, you get the audiobooks, because now, like with Forgotten Ruin, we've moved to recording our own audiobooks in-house. So we pay the production costs and everything like that. We hire a really great narrator like Christopher Ryan Grant, and then we work with a company and we produce a really good audiobook. And now we can just basically give those to you through Findaway, through a funnel, cheaper than going on Audible and spending a credit. So people have really liked that and everything like that. And I said, well, we need one more kind of like thing to get people to subscribe and show up on a weekly basis. So 2 weeks ago, we started a serial, which is based on our main character that everybody loves, which is Tyrus Rex, who's basically like, think Boba Fett and the Mandalorian, but Obi-Wan Kenobi and with space Alzheimer's. And he's like this really cool, awesome bounty hunter, and everybody digs him. And he's a really great character. He's a great soldier. And so we decided to start a serial based on him. And so if you're a subscriber, you get a serial episode every week. And then because we know like the supply chain crisis, we know that not everybody can read, that some people like cops or truck drivers or night workers, they listen to their stuff. And so maybe a subscription method doesn't appeal to them. So they do get the audiobooks. And then we took the weekly serial, and Jason and I switch off basically recording it, highly polished presentation. And so you get to hear our version of it, warts and all, and some asides. And so far people have liked that. They've dug it. It's been pretty fun. So we're trying to make this, we think that there are 3 places that you get books. You get books at the bookstore, and you get books on Amazon. And we want to be the 3rd place, which every author has. Every author has their own website. You have the ability to sell your own books. You don't have to be on the Amazon plantation. It's a very good plantation when it works. And I've made a lot of money on Amazon, and I have liked it. But lately, the treatment and behavior, like the upshot of getting our account canceled on Monday was, oh, sorry, that was a mistake, but don't violate the terms of service. And both Jason and I were like, wait, we didn't violate the terms of service. You messed up. You cost us income all weekend, and it's a significant amount of income. And then you turn around and tell us, like, you threaten us. Like, sometimes it's like being in an abusive relationship. And then you consider that, like, Amazon determines all the royalties and rates. And if they ever want to like look at everybody, and there has been talk of this, and move everybody, like, remember, what do we do for Amazon? We give them free content so that they can sell toilet paper and survival tools and books and all the writers putting stuff up in KDP, that's free. They're not even paying for it. So to get the level of service that you get from these people, like, you would think like they would try to help us more to sell books, and there are huge hits on Amazon, huge indie hits. They don't make those at Amazon Studios. They go make some big trade pub author who hates everybody's guts stuff. It's beginning to become a dysfunctional relationship. So we looked at our method and we said, you know what? Why should we be treated like this and give these people exclusivity? That literally is broken codependent behavior. So we just have decided to take matters into our own hands and become the 3rd place to sell books.
Sounds good. I mean, yeah. It was only a matter of time before Amazon,
I think so,
abused their, position of power. They do hold all the cards, or did.
You're some guy and you write a Space Marine book, and everybody goes, oh wow, that's a really great Space Marine book. Can you write another? And so you write another, and this is a standard story on Amazon, and you write like 6 Space Marine books while you're working at your day job. And one day you get a royalty check that is your entire year's salary at your day job. And you're like, I don't need to do my day job anymore. And people are asking for more books than I have time. And my family life is suffering. Why don't I take this check and just stay home? There's a big matzo ball to hang. The safety of working for a large corporation and stuff, like something happens to you or whatever, you've still got insurance, you've got unions, you've got things that are going to protect you. You're investing in 401ks, all these wonderful things that are about being with a company that I hope cares about you. So you decide to go write for Amazon, And then some low-level turd at Amazon decides that they don't like the way you think, and they chill your account, and you're sitting there and your wife's like, but our mortgage payment, and your kids are like, how am I going to go to school, or baseball, or, or college or whatever. Like, there isn't a level of respect coming from people that you are literally betting your life on.
Mhm.
And to just callously turn off your accounts or treat, indie authors the way they do by constantly like, oh, have you guys figured out a way to make money this way? Well, guess what? We don't even allow that as a weighting factor anymore. We've moved it over to here. We don't even tell you, and we don't work with you, and we pick the winners, and we hate your guts for the way that you think. And you're like, this is weird. I got to find some people who actually like me, and it's something somebody in this crowd says, is it Brian Niemeyer or Declan Finn or whatever, who says, don't give money to people who hate you. It's a true statement. It's a true statement. And we all kind of have to begin to say that with a culture and a government. Oh, he said he wasn't getting political. But, why would you be with a girl or a boy who hates your guts? You wouldn't be.
Yeah.
We all have to say that.
That's a shame.
Well, and just as a reminder to authors, Amazon right now is giving a 70-30 split, right? The author gets 70% and Amazon takes 30. And that seems like a great deal. But you got to remember, that's only the deal because Apple opened up their iBooks store.
Yeah.
Before Apple opened up their iBooks store, it was a 7-30 cut the other way. Amazon got the 70 and you got the 30.
Yep.
And if you don't think that Amazon doesn't have dreams of returning to that, you're crazy.
I think that's the thing that we all know is coming and we're afraid of. And Amazon had a great COVID year when they wiped out the high street and middle America. And then this year hasn't been so great for them. There are things to say about that, but gosh, I wish they cared about people who are just trying to make a living the way that they seem to care about, vapid celebrities who do stupid shit and then write a book about it. And you get all the prize. It's just, there's a lack of love at Amazon for indie authors. And I don't understand because we basically, honestly, put them on the map. We really did.
Crazy.
So I've got one question to ask before we start rounding off the show. And the phrase is, there isn't a body, or there wasn't a body. That is, until you see a body in a work of fiction, somebody really isn't necessarily dead.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just wondering, there was a really, really popular character who died supposedly maybe early on, but I don't remember their body showing up. So I'm just wondering if you have any maybe plans for that character to unexpectedly return.
Well, I've gamed that out, and there is a way. But as Jeff Goldblum says in Jurassic Park, just because you can do a thing doesn't mean you should. Mm-hmm. And so what I'm hoping is that character in his, we're talking about Tyrus Rex, in his Contracts and Termination series, which is kind of his greatest hits prequel. And then this new Tyrus Rex Hard Target, which is the weekly serial. I hope that makes people happy. But could he re-enter the main series? Yes, there is definitely a way he can re-enter the main series. And I knew it when I did it. And I left the mechanics there to be done. But you don't want a Patrick Duffy thing. So is it the right thing to do? Now, there is an interesting new character in Forgotten Ruin, enough said. But it's interesting. But it's like, do people want that? I don't know. I mean, I like Tyrus Rex. He's a great character, but he has been around for 2000 years, and so much of GE is really about all these other characters and things like that. I mean, he's an overshadowing character. I mean, he's introduced as a legend, and I don't think anything that ever has been written about him. And you write Tyrus Rex very true. You know, like in the opening serial, he just gets the living crap beat out of him. You know, like he's not the guy, but the only great thing about Tyrus Rex is he's relentless. You know, and then the fun thing is you as a writer, which, you know, read devil is what the writer is in the story. You're the devil, you know, is that you throw all the stuff and the kitchen sink that you can at him, and he just keeps going. That's how, like, I think that was one of Vonnegut's 10 rules for writing. Like, do everything awful that you can do to a character, and when you've run out of awful things to do, that's the end of the story. Well, in Galactic Outlaws, which was the second book, and was, you know, being written at the same time as the first book, one of the kitchen sinks finally got through and creamed him, you know, and it was a great moment and everything like that. But there is something about those pyramids, and then that's talked about in Imperator with Irmo. And so the pyramids violate time and space, and there's one right there where he dies. So it's interesting.
I will say this, and this is kind of off topic.
Sure.
The scenes, or a topic adjacent, the scenes of the three of them aboard that Hulk, and the ominousness of the ship they're in, and you know, just how that whole part is described, I think, for me, is the most unsettling and the best, most vivid scene in the entire series.
And you mean Imperator on the O'Neill sphere?
No, I'm talking about Tyrus and the Admiral and his friend, when the three of them are on the Hulk where they got captured, and they're walking across that huge field.
Yeah.
Up towards the structure that's in the center, and they're feeling that overwhelming strangeness or evil, or that just hangs around me, and it has always hung around with me longer than I can remember a lot of stuff from the series, you know, and I could, you know, probably sit down and discuss it with people, but that one scene was just for flavor and for ominousness and for atmosphere. That's what I'm thinking of, for atmosphere.
It was like that set piece is influenced by two modern things, and I've never, like, I think writers try to sit around and act like they came up with everything in the world. I never do that. Ralph Lauren is one of my big heroes as a fashion designer, and Ralph Lauren doesn't really actually cut clothing or measure clothing or do anything. He's not like when he's not doing fashion, he sits around and looks at pictures and influences and then begins to assemble those. And I kind of do the same thing in a lot of ways. And that set piece that you're talking about there is a combination of two things. One of the first science fiction novels I ever read was Rendezvous with Rama. And that isn't necessarily so dark and ominous to me because it's a big giant cylinder in space. And it was, you know, one of, you know, how we were talking about space colonization, and what if a colony came to Earth and our local astronauts went and landed on it, and then they found a world inside of it. So that was the concept that intrigued me there. And then playing Dead Space. And I was like, okay, well, what if those two things got together and had a freak baby that had, you know, witch powers, and there's probably a little fear in there, the game Fear, you know, and so it's Fear and it's Dead Space and it's a Rendezvous with Rama. And you're absolutely right, that is an unsettling, and it's the introduction of the Savages, who are the prime boogeymen in Galaxy's Edge, and all the Savages are the elites of today, realizing that the Earth is is screwed, and they've probably haven't done too well with either ecological management or just like, being kind of elitist assholes, and we're all done with them. And so they jump into these colony ships and take off at dumb speed, which is sublight, to get to the next world because Earth isn't going to make it. And they're about 7 years gone from the system in these giant O'Neill cylinders and things like that in their utopias. And we all know what happens in a utopia. Like, it turns into the island of Dr. Moreau. Like the reason that a world with a bunch of different cultures and a bunch of different voices and the ability to discuss and disagree and not censor is great, is because you have variety and difference, and you edit out the bad, and you keep an amount of sanity even in that argument. But what if you took everybody at Google who's a true believer and you said, here, we're going to let you live inside a spaceship for 40 years until you get to Alpha Centauri? Well, you're going to find that it's going to turn into madness. It's going to turn into a cult. And so that's what the savages, basically turn into a bunch of cults who don't even like each other at the beginning, out there in space trying to get their perfect utopia just right. Well, what happened with humanity is about 7 years after the savages left, because things really were that bad, they discovered jump. They discovered the hyperdrive. And so the savages were moving at dumb speed, just the shy of 0.99 of light, which still takes forever. Well, once you have hyperspace, it's near instantaneous. And so humanity, who was cast off, as opposed to transhumanity, humanity now gets to the stars first, discovers the world, colonizes them, and develops them. And then the savages show up insane, and basically they're savages. They're no longer elite societies; they're barbarian tribes.
And no longer human.
No longer human. They're a combination. That's the fun part about wargaming the savages is taking modern sort of like cultural development and microcosmic cultural development, and then wargaming that out of 40 years of being all by yourself inside a giant cylinder, and finding out that the cult arises, that suddenly you need calories, and so you decide to start. There's a great Stephen King short story about a doctor who gets stranded on a rocky island, and he has to start cutting off pieces of his own body to survive. And so that happens to a particular tribe of savages, and they then discover life digital, and that you don't really need a body. Maybe you just need a brain in a jar. And so all the different savage tribes have some sort of like Frankensteinian horror that they get up to in those respects. And it's kind of fun to play with, and then they end up on worlds, and ultimately they become kind of agoraphobic, being in space so long. So even when they get to those worlds that they're going to now start their great society on, they instead just basically pillage, rape, and loot, and then get back in their ships, and where it's safe in the dark, and they can continue to get up to their controlled madness. Because for those kind of sort of fascistic societies, it really never was about the dream. It was about the control, and how, the limits of control that you can have in a 40-kilometer long O'Neill cylinder, where you govern everything from the power, the water, and the light. Like, for those kind of control freaks, the control is limitless, which is ironic but interesting.
The Stephen King story is called Survivor Type.
Yes. Yeah. And it's in Skeleton Crew.
Skeleton Crew. Yep.
Skeleton Crew. That's a great story. I know Stephen King, but he gets some good ones sometimes.
So yeah, if you I'm trying to think. No, it's not my job. This isn't my time. This is John's job.
What is John's job?
At this point, you're supposed to be like, oh, by the way, do you have anything else left to say? That's what your job is.
Well, you were saying it. I don't have anything else left to say.
Oh, okay. I guess
no one should ever ask me if I have anything else to say, because we will sit here for 6 hours. I have much more to say. If you would like to hear it, and you like listening to podcasts, come on over to Control Alt Revolt, the podcast. It's on Spotify, and it's on iTunes, and it's on Substack, and you could even subscribe and give me money, and you get more content and fun stuff. Or you can go over to galacticoutlaws.com and you can get Galaxy's Edge stuff. Jason is working on the Wargate site to make sure that you guys can sign up. But you can always friend me on Facebook or the garbage dumpster that is Twitter. I'm around.
Cool. And we do have we've got links to your books, your latest stuff, Strange Company.
Yeah.
Season 2 of Galaxy's Edge is out.
Yeah.
And the latest Forgotten Ruins. I might go ahead and read all the Forgotten Ruins. I'm gonna have to. Full disclosure, I don't read stuff for fun.
You should though. It's good for you.
Okay, I'll consider it, just because it gets you money.
Well, I mean, I don't mean it's good for you like in a pills or vitamin way. It's just, I mean, I don't know. I think there's a sense of play that comes with reading, and like I found, like, how old are you?
41.
41. You're still young because you're in the things are coming together, and now you're about to enter like the wheelhouse of success, which is your 40s. And in the 50s, like everything really does come together, and you've got it all trimmed out, and you're not insecure anymore, and things are great. But at the same time, you do miss being young and having the optimism and the fun stuff. And I find like reading, and especially adventure and pulp and stuff like that, it just, you do get overwhelmed by the cares of life in your 40s and 50s because there's just, a lot of people are by that time depending on you. And so it is nice to have an escape where perhaps you're Philip Marlowe in 1940s and 50s Los Angeles, or you're a ranger killing an orc horde, or you're a space marine on the edge of human expansion trying to figure your deal out. It's just, I'm not saying you become an obsessive reader, but hey, this was kind of the Stephen King show, but he always said, always have a paperback in your pocket for when you go to the DMV. And so it is good advice. And it wards off Alzheimer's. Supposedly.
Oh, I'm in. I would like to ward that off.
I would not like to lose my marbles. Yeah, supposedly reading helps you with that. But you know what? I always say reading will take you more places than a jet airplane ever will.
Ooh, I like that. On that note, I'm definitely done with questions and things for today. We'll definitely make sure people know where to get your books and everything. Really happy to hear about all your new projects and your ongoing success. It's always fun to talk to you. I'd also like to thank the chat for hanging out today. We had a lively discussion all throughout, and I hope everybody listening later really enjoyed the discussion. I am done for today. Nicole, any last words?
Thank you guys for having me. I love this crowd and just the people that I get to meet, and you guys. And Daddy Warpig was somebody that really came out for me when I got canceled from HarperCollins. And Larry Correia said, "Hey, I told you that there was a left-wing bias in publishing." And it was one of your tweets that really just suddenly rocked that book. And I'll tell you, when I wrote that book and then they fired me from HarperCollins because I said unsayable things in there, I didn't feel like I was going to win. I felt like my career was over, and I felt like I was keying the boss's car on the way out the door. But it was the support of Daddy Warpig and then the people that I found through here. And not everybody liked me, and some people do, but boy, I felt like I was done, and I wasn't. And I'm always grateful and always appreciative of that. And at the end of the day, you guys and Daddy Warpig, you guys are the heroes. And I am so honored that I get to write stories for people like you.
Thanks. And Daddy Warpig, try and stay humble as you close out the show, because you are awesome.
All right. How can I not be humble with an audience as amazing and awesome as ours is? I do want to thank our amazing and awesome audience for coming and listening live to the show today. And I want to thank everyone who will be listening later. Just a reminder to the audience, you can catch us live just about every Saturday. We missed last week because it was my birthday, and I wasn't doing this on my birthday. I went and hung out with my family, and then I went and watched Scream on my birthday. I still am pondering the wisdom of that, but it was a great birthday nonetheless. So you can catch us just about every week. just about the same time on youtube.com/geekgab. That is youtube.com/geekgab. Or you can catch us on the Google Play Store. You can catch us on the iTunes Store. And you can catch us on SoundCloud.com to listen to us to the device of your choice or just on the web. We are available and on as many places as we can be for your convenience. We are signing out for today, but don't you worry, don't you fret. We will be back.